How do you go from $160,000 a year corporate role, quitting that role, taking a gap year, traveling around Australia with a young family, and then in under 6 months, create a high six-figure freedom business? Well, today's guest has done exactly that. And what we want to do is show you Luke's journey, the steps that he took. It's a little bit surprising. It's a little bit slight a difference to this strategy that Luke's done, something very clever here, in order, though, to create that freedom business. We know a lot of listeners to this podcast, that's what they're looking for. A lot of you are in corporate roles or highly paid roles. If you're sitting on the fence about or looking at for the inspiration to maybe go out there and create your own freedom business, today's interview is going to be absolutely awesome for you. So, Luke, thank you so much for coming along today to share your story.
Thanks, Matt. Very excited.
So, Luke, the story's got to start with, what was your role? What was his? How did you earn this $160,000 a year?
So my background's in mechanical engineering, but I've spent the better part of probably nearly 15 years as a reliability engineer across mining in South Australia, as well as we spent a fair bit of time up in Mackay in Queensland.
Okay, so you've invested, let's say invested 15 years. Yeah, you trained at uni, mechanical engineering. So, mate, everyone's thinking like, wow. So you just quit all that and walked away. As we record this interview, how long ago was that? Like, what led up to that point? What was happening there? We need to get this story out, Luke, because there is a bit to unpack here, but what led up to that point of quitting?
Sure. So we'd actually started making some decisions for our family quite a few years ago, such as moving back from Mackay to South Australia to be closer to home. That obviously came with a pay cut itself. And then, even with the FIFO role up on site, then started to move back away from mining so that we could, spend more time with our young kids. And it really got to a point where I was effectively pretty burnt out from work. Really struggling to, enjoy the types of problem solving that I was doing because of the bureaucracy of work, etc. And we decided to, again, for the sake of our kids, to spend a gap year traveling around Australia. We did that in a caravan, and we did that for 12 months, which was great. And we did take a bit of a hit financially to do so. But what it allowed me to do was to really clear my headspace, and as well as with my wife, and work out what we really wanted to achieve. So coming back from that, we did have 4 key goals that we wanted our work now to be, remote work if possible. We wanted to have more flexible hours to spend with the kids and help, have an active role as being a dad. We wanted to also build a passive income on the side for, for our assets and for our future. And we also just really wanted to get back that control in our life. And that led us to, exploring some options as to how else we could, work remotely and take back a bit of our time.
And so at the time, both of you are high income earners. So just so for someone listening, you can imagine, our community, they're all very similar to yourself. So you decided it wasn't an outright quit your job at the top, like you quit the job, but it was more, let's take a gap year to decompress, like you said, clear your head. And was your wife in the same boat too, was she? What did she do? What was she earning as well?
Yeah, so around that time, it was just as our kids were starting to be old enough that she could go back to work. So my wife is a speech pathologist, and she was working for one of the bigger telehealth companies in Australia. And so she was doing about 3 days a week. And earning okay, but like I was still the primary, breadwinner, if you will. And that meant that the pressure was on me to continue to bring in that level of income. So that very first trip that we did really was a bit of a hit. I think it would have cost us, easily in the hundreds of thousands, $100,000 to do a trip around Australia. And that's purely from like an opportunity cost that we lost.
Yeah. So the two of you working. You're on 160, she's on what, 70, 80 odd grand?
Yeah, around about that.
And so you bought a big 4-wheel drive and a caravan. What sort of 4-wheel drive did you buy?
We actually went very base level on it. We bought an old Ford Ranger, and we bought a 2006 Windsor Rapid, which, you'd get a bit of a look in the caravan parks from people in the really flash stuff and say, it's what you can do it. And we said, no, we actually choose to do this because our kids are pretty rough on gear, so it means we don't have to worry about it too much.
How old were your kids?
So when we did our lap around Australia, that was they were about 3 and 6, so they're still quite young.
And for you guys at that time, when you look back now, obviously we know the outcome. It's turned out really well for you. But at that time, any regrets? Was it scary? Like it must have been financially a pretty scary moment, or did you always know you'd get another job or something? Like what was the thinking?
Yeah, so always knew I'd be able to get another job. Luckily, the engineering industry is fairly good for needing good engineers. Um, I guess the trick of it was, will I get a job as good as the one that I've got? That was always a nagging question in the back of my head. But yeah, it did take a bit of a financial impact to us. We were pretty lucky. We'd made some investment decisions in things like real estate previously that we could afford to do it. And at the end of it, we both said, look, we'll never regret spending the money to be able to spend the time with our boys. So,
With your kids. So I guess from that trip, let's now look what led you to here. That I think you said to me off the camera, one of the outcomes of that trip was we want to find a way to earn remote income. So what did you do when you finished the trip? What was the next steps? So
well,
because obviously you tasted the good life, right? You can living on the road, doing whatever you want, not having to work for a year. So what did you both decide to do at that point?
Well, funnily enough, I'll just catch you on that point there. Being an engineer, and being on the road, you actually go a little bit crazy not having work to do. They say, how do you motivate an
Yeah,
engineer? You
okay.
give them a pile of really interesting problems.
Yeah.
So I came back very hungry to go back and get into an engineering type role or problem solving because I couldn't just sit still. And so we first looked for another role that was going to allow that remote working and a bit more flexibility and freedom. So I ended up taking a role as a consulting engineer, which meant a lot of
Okay.
working from home and occasionally visiting, mine sites and doing the FIFO gig. So it was a very traditional, 9 to 5, but trying to, move it a little bit more to working from home.
And so what happened though? Like how long did that last and what changed?
Yeah, so at the start it was really good. It was giving me a lot more control and freedom. I was able to be, there in the mornings and home at night time for helping out with the young kids.
Mhm.
But then over time, it started to really morph more into the 9 to 5 traditional role. I found that I didn't really have that level of control over my hours, and that there were times when if we had a big project on that needed to be, to be finished, there could be, I think at one point it was, 12-hour work days, six weeks in a row. It was very hard to get
Wow.
through. And unfortunately, that's what the work and the project need, but that comes at the sacrifice of what our family needed. So, again, then we were looking at, well, how else can we continue this journey towards being more free of both financially free as well as
Mhm.
being able to do interesting work remotely from home or from wherever we choose to. And at the same time, my wife, who really enjoyed our lap around Australia, had decided that
Yeah.
maybe a lap around Tasmania for 5 to 6 months was a good idea as well. So that was on the cards to get back to that lifestyle.
And so what was the clever thing that you did? Well, I think it's a clever thing. So you're in this situation, you've gone back in a corporate role thinking that this isn't working for the family's sake, and your kids are, 3 and 6 year olds, they're at that young age, that really amazing stage in life. What was the unique idea that you came up with? I'd love you to share it with our audience, how you created this high six-figure in business so quickly.
Sure. So I obviously had joined the Digital Investors, the e-Business Institute Digital Investors Program.
Mhm.
And that really taught the basics and fundamentals of how to build websites and the correct layouts, etc., to really drive the traffic through there. And my wife came to me probably about 3 or 4 months before we were due to go on this trip around Tasmania and said that she'd finally had enough of her work. She'd gotten to the point where she wasn't feeling valued there and that she wasn't, again, feeling in control of the hours that she was working or the types of work that she wanted to do. And she said, well, if I quit my job, would you help me build a business using your knowledge from the e-Business Institute and develop a website that will help bring me in leads so that I can just see clients? And we looked at the numbers and went, this actually makes a lot of sense. So with the confidence that she had in my ability, as I'd showed her, I built a couple of websites.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that was a good idea or not, but
Yeah.
yeah, she,
Lucky
she
Luke, that's cool, mate. You build beautiful sites. I've got to
yeah,
say. So,
she let me have a go at building a website for her,
yeah.
which was one of the first real local business sort of websites that I had built. And off of the back of that, we started seeing the leads start pouring in probably from about 4 or 6 weeks afterwards. as well as, helping her get established and, using a bit of social media as well. But what that allowed us to do was that when we left for Tasmania, she was working 3 days a week, earning nearly double what she was earning when she was working for the big telehealth group. And that 5 months, again, I had to leave my job so that I could look after the young kids when she was working, which worked really well. It means that, I spent my 3 days at playgrounds and, bakeries and things like that. But yeah, she then worked on her business through that. And we both helped to, really establish her. So by the time that she got back after 6 months, her books were completely full. She had a full caseload. And that generates that actually generates more than what I was earning as an engineer, in the first place. So it was that then allowed us. It was almost like a turning point. That then allowed us when we came back. I didn't have to return to work. She was at a point where her business was generating enough income that I could then take that step and actually do this full time with my own digital agency.
So, mate, this is really cool, isn't it, for our listeners when you think about it? And it was a comment that Liz made to me about you and your wife. And we see this all the time in our communities. You guys that are used to working at a high level, in health or engineering or any level, like whether it's a high level, like at trades and stuff, you guys are often sitting on unrealized assets and knowledge that you have. And just with a slight tweak with the digital skills, you and your wife are the perfect example of this. So that the tweak was, let's build a real business for your wife rather than her working for some corporate. Now she's building, because this is going to turn into an asset. You're doing already high six figures in under 6 months. Whilst it launched, I hope the clients aren't listening, it's launched while she's traveling around Tassie with the kids. Pretty impressive. And so I guess you used your not natural, but your problem solving skills as well. Obviously you love building websites. So it's kind of all come together. And is your wife happy with the business too that you've built for her?
Yeah, yeah. I'll say that she certainly had a very aggressive hand in building it too. It wasn't just me, and she's an incredible person.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, she's a very high achiever and a perfectionist. So probably going to be one of the harder clients that I've had to work for. But she's ecstatic. She's very happy with the way that she can work. She's now in control of the types of clients that she sees when she sees them. We took, and the proof's in the pudding. Really, we took Wednesday morning last week to go and see our kids at their school assembly, and we both sat there. And this is the second time we've been able to do that. So that ability to control and manage our time flexibly means that at the end of the day, our family benefits significantly from the time that we can spend with our boys and really pursuing the things that we want to do.
So you guys discovered some intellectual gold sitting between the two of you just by taking time out. So if you're listening to this, sometimes it is worth taking time out, a gap year, and exploring, and hear what Luke said. They had very clear-cut goals. They were looking for the 4 things. Do you want to say the 4 things that you're always looking for?
Yeah. So we came back from that first trip knowing that we wanted to be able to work remotely, to spend more time, working from home. We wanted the flexibility in our hours. We wanted to build an income-producing asset so that we, weren't reliant on that paycheck to paycheck. And we really wanted that control back over our time. And those were really the 4 key pillars, I guess, as to, why we've taken these steps over the years. And it's all to the benefit of, our kids and our family, and to ourselves as well. We want to be able to spend the time where we decide that we want to be able to do it, not just when we're told, well, it's work time, you have to work now. So,
mate, congratulations. And do you feel you've achieved that now? Because I know this is still early in the journey, but do you feel you've achieved it?
Yeah, it wasn't until I was writing an email the other day about it that I listed it out and thought, well, actually, for all the 4 things that we'd started out trying to achieve, we've actually got there. And it's a great feeling, to have achieved that. Now, we haven't quite reached, some of our financial and lighthouse goals, but that is going to take time, as all good things do. But yeah, really, when I reflect on it, this was the point at which I finally was able to take the step and take the risk, because I was no longer under the pressure of being that, income producer for the family.
Winner for the family. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. It meant that, I could step back and take a risk and try something new, and something that I was, going to really enjoy because I'd given it a bit of a go previously. So.
And I think, Luke, our community and also in society these days, there is a lot of pressure, I think, I see it through men in senior roles, they feel trapped for their family's sake. You know, they are the, in inverted commas, primary breadwinner. But then, as you know, in our community too, we have a lot of women like your wife who are, you know, what do you call them? Ultra high achievers who are
Yeah.
in that same sort of roles as well. But the point being, if you're a male listening to this, there is solutions. Get our wives to work for it. Well, you know, Liz and I are business partners. It's great. But I do, like, all jokes aside, it was a very smart move to use that unrealized IP. Your wife loves what she's doing, and it's reduced the pressure on you now. So now what are you doing? Let's go. So, like you said, financially, this has worked out really well so that you don't have to go back to work. What's your main strategy now?
So we're currently exploring a couple of different options and really seeing what works and what fits, my interests and passions.
Mm.
So we've set up a digital agency, Amplify Web Design.
Yep.
That's really targeting the local area for both Adelaide and Murray Bridge, because we're obviously in South Australia.
Yep.
That's been great. It's given me a really, interesting or diverse range of skill sets that I'm having to learn and build in terms of, networking with people and, joining groups like BNI, joining the local business alliances, etc., and talking with business owners around the community to see how we can help them out. The other avenue that we're exploring too is building directories. So I've already built one for the local business region, and we're about to build one for the aviation industry, because that's a second passion that I've got is around aviation. And then the other thing that we've been looking at is the portfolio site. So I own a couple of small content sites that we used for a bit of practice on to really dial in how we build up content sites. But yeah, looking to try and establish a portfolio of content sites. Probably around
And
that $50,000 mark,
okay.
to be able to start generating an income that we're not having to, I guess, as actively go out and pursue. So
Yeah, so we should mention to listeners, Luke is on our Champions program, and the other awesome reason why I do want to put a time perspective on this, because Luke, you've been with us for less than 6 months, and you're already achieving like a high six-figure business for your wife, but for yourself in your own digital agency. We should mention too, describe the area that you live in, Murray Bridge, like, so we've got some concept, because it's not a, like, it's on the outskirts, isn't it? What
yeah.
sort of an area is it?
So we actually, when we were traveling around Australia, my kids would always tell people we come from Callington, and everybody would just stare at us blankly. No one knows where Callington is. It's a very small town that's probably about 20 kilometres away from Murray Bridge.
Yep.
So we're right in the centre between Murray Bridge, Strathalbyn, and Mount Barker, our three big centres.
Yep.
And to get to any of those, it's about a 20-minute drive. So if I was going to go back to a full-time job, probably the closest that I would have to drive would be at least 20 minutes each day, to get there, and then probably 20 minutes back as well. And hence why, the remote working, is certainly a goal of ours, or was a goal of ours to get to. And that's because we've chosen to live on a 30-acre property. And
Nice.
that allows us, or affords us, plenty of access for, our kids to ride motorbikes, and, we've got plenty of room for them to just be,
Right.
rough and tumble little boys.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So you live in a rural area
Yeah.
in here in Australia, but it's what, 20, 30 odd minutes, no, maybe further. It's on so Murray Bridge itself, where you're picking up your local agency clients. How big is that? That's kind of like a little mini city, isn't it? Is it what is it?
Yeah, I believe there are about 21,000 people.
Okay.
And that is I guess the bigger of the centres that we have around. But because we're also, close within Adelaide, that's probably about 45 minutes away. So we can, and I have actually got a couple of clients for the digital agency who are up in Queensland. I've got one on the Gold Coast, one in
Okay.
Townsville. So people find you from anywhere, and it's
Mm.
usually either word of mouth referrals, etc., that they come in from. So while we're locally networking, we're also able to serve customers and clients right across Australia.
Awesome. And so your digital agency, you've only been doing that side of it with us in Champions for what, under 6 months. Are you seeing how is that traveling for you as well? Like, is that something that you want to pursue long term? How's that traveling for you, living in that sort of an area?
Yeah, it's been good. I think actively, I've only been working on it for probably the last maybe 12 weeks.
Okay.
Given that,
Yep.
yeah, because we sort of everything was a little bit on hold. It was a lot of learning while we were traveling. And then
Yes.
when we came back in January, we were able to then sort of ramp things up. So actively working on the digital agency for about 12 weeks. And yeah, it's been a really interesting learning journey. So a lot of the digital skills all came from the Digital Investors Program,
Yep.
and that made it easy to have the confidence to go out and talk to customers and clients about their websites for their business.
Perfect.
I think probably the most learning that I've had to do around that though is the sales and marketing. That's been an interesting way. Engineers just love to sit down and solve a problem.
Yeah.
Being able to sell that problem in the first
Yeah.
place is an entirely new skill set I've had to learn. But it's been a good journey to learn that, and a lot of that has been around just changing the mindset just ever so slightly. That it's not about being the precious salesman. It's about actually genuinely trying to help people and help businesses to better connect. And what's good for them becomes good for us. So
Man, I'm just looking at you thinking, what a change in life. So if you're listening to this, another thing we haven't mentioned, you may have just picked up, Luke only finished traveling around Australia, what, like we're just talking, this is all in the space of under a year, pretty much, isn't it? That this has all happened?
yeah, so
Year and a
that was
half?
traveling around Tasmania. So we did 6 months in Tasmania
That's
recently.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all ramped up really quickly. And it was funny, I was only saying the other night how, there's all this work going on and I can't believe it, but really it's been only 12 weeks, since I first
On
really sunk my teeth into it, which has been good. So
And Luke, several other things that come out here, and I will mention this to the guys because this is at the beginning of your journey for your digital agency. But you mentioned in your email you're looking like you're going to be hitting that 5 to 6 grand a month pretty soon, mate.
yeah.
That's seriously impressive in and of itself. Plus, you remember you got your wife's main business, but once that starts kicking off, you guys are pretty much set.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as long as like we've got a couple of goals in place, to mean that this is a viable business option for me.
Yep.
Otherwise, my wife has said if you're not making any money within a year, you're going back to work. So I said no, I've got to make this happen. So yeah, no, it's been good. We're talking with a lot of clients at the moment, a lot of proposals, and they're slowly starting to kick in, which is great.
Good.
And more importantly, we're able to help people. And that's really the end of the day. Like I said, what motivates an engineer is putting an interesting pile of work in front of them.
Yeah.
People have all got different problems to solve, and yeah, we're more than happy to do that. It was funny. I was talking to one of the coaches and said it was when I first started. I thought, well, how does engineering, and I've also got an MBA in business, how does that actually relate into web design? And then it wasn't until I built the first couple I realized that the engineering is about analyzing big data sets and turning that into information. Using my MBA, I'm able to then turn that into a business strategy, and then using the skills that the e-business did with the Digital Investors Program, I turn that into a website, and all those three things connect and flow really, really well. So
That mate, that is so cool, and I love to. It's worth thinking about if you're listening to this. When you've just completely retrained, not just in digital skills, but also interpersonal skills like sales skills and things like that. And hats off to you. That is a challenge, especially when you're trained as an engineer all your life. You've got to get out there in your local community now and sell. And mate, I love how you've just said, things are going slowly. I don't think it's slow, Luke. You do know the rule in Champions. It's meant to be a learning year, not an earning year. It's meant to take you more than a year. You're like Steph, there's we get talking to you and look what she's done in 6 months, who we just had on the podcast. And there's a whole bunch of you now who are doing this stuff in under 6 months. And when you sent us your accountability the other day, I thought we have to get this story out there and share with everyone how you've been able to come up with a high six-figure freedom business for your wife. And that then allowed you to not have to go back to work yourself and build up your digital agency. And I think, Luke, I want to say a big thank you for sharing your inspirational story. Hopefully, there's going to be some, dads and mums out there thinking maybe there's other assets we're sitting on that we could turn into, remote freedom style businesses. So big congratulations and a big thank you for sharing your story today on the Digital Investors Podcast.
thank you very much, Matt. It's great to see how far we've actually come in such a short amount of time. And I think it's because of being around people like Steph, who I'm a bit of a competitive person. They're very motivating to go out there and make it happen. So
yeah, I think that's like a Mission Avenue all those years ago. They saw Pete and Renee and said, we want to do it quicker. And that's why we share these stories. Hey, anyone listening to, it's not just whether or not you're in Champions, but it's great. I think you'll agree to hear Luke's stories today. If you're sitting on the fence about quitting your job, and I'm not giving you advice to go out, rush out there and quit your job, but what Luke and I shared with you today is the way that Luke and his wife have been able to make it become a reality And literally by taking that gap year, clearing their heads, decompressing, and then coming up with knowing what they wanted to achieve and their four big goals, which is, I'll read out, the remote work, work flexible hours so they can see their family, build an income producing asset for our future, which you've already, so with your wife's business now, she has an asset where she never used to have that. And also, but most importantly, as you said to us, give us back the control over our time and our life. And a big congratulations. And I think you've just helped inspire a lot of people. Got a lot of couples out there chatting about maybe we do a lap of Australia or something and see what happens. But anyway, but thank you, Luke, for sharing your story.
No worries. Thanks, Matt.